Good afternoon. I am Matt Fruman, Ward 3 Council Member and Chairperson of the Committee on Human Services. Today is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. We are meeting in person in room 123 of the John A. Wilson Building and virtually via Zoom. The time is now 2:05 p.m. Today, we are conducting a performance oversight hearing on the Office of Lottery and Gaming, or OLG. OLG is the regulatory body over all licensed gaming in the District of Columbia, including lottery, charitable gaming, and sports wagering. Its mission is to responsibly maximize revenue generation for the District of Columbia through the sale of innovative lottery and sports wagering products. Since its inception in 1982, the DC Lottery has awarded $5 billion in prizes to members of the district community and transferred more than $2.43 billion to the district's general fund. The money OLG transfers goes to support essential services throughout DC, such as education, recreation, and parks, housing, and senior services. Additionally, the OLG directly benefits local businesses by providing commissions to retailers licensed to sell DC Lottery games and has helped local nonprofits raise more than $141.5 million for social causes benefiting the residents of the District of Columbia through their charitable games division. OLG ensures it provides gaming regulation and oversight that upholds the highest standards of integrity and public trust. I look forward to delving into the functions of OLG and how the office works to benefit all residents of the district through responsible and ethical gaming regulations. We will now move to our government witnesses' testimony with just one note on logistics. Should any of my fellow council members join us, they will have 10 minutes each to ask a round of questions, and I will generally turn to my colleagues in the order they arrive. I will start our government witness testimony by asking Randy Burnside, Executive Director of the Office of Lottery and Gaming, as well as anyone else from his staff who wishes to testify, to join us at the table in front of me. It is the practice of this committee to place our government witnesses under oath. So please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Human Services is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may begin your testimony.
Chairperson Fruman, members of the committee, good afternoon. I am Randy Burnside, the Executive Director of the Office of Lottery and Gaming. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on OLG's performance for fiscal years 2025 and 2026. Joining me today are my colleagues, Eugene Vlasenko, our Chief Operating Officer, Ridgely Bennett, our Chief Counsel, Alex Akporji, our Agency Fiscal Officer, and Peter Alvarado, our Director of Regulation and Oversight. Since 1982, OLG has served as a vital enterprise for the district, generating revenue to support essential services while upholding integrity and consumer protections in regulated gaming. The DC Lottery offers a diverse portfolio of modern and innovative games, including traditional scratch-off tickets, popular multi-state jackpot draw games such as Powerball, monitor games, and interactive iLottery gaming that's available online and through our official app. In total, the DC Lottery provides more than 200 games at various price points and play styles, accessible online and through over 338 licensed retail locations across the district. In addition, OLG regulates commercial sports wagering, games of skill, commercial bingo, and charitable gaming. Since our inception, OLG has paid more than $5 billion in prizes to players, distributed over $486 million in commissions to local retailers, transferred more than $2.4 billion to the district's general fund, and helped nonprofits raise more than $141 million through charitable gaming. In fiscal year 25, OLG continued to deliver strong results. OLG transferred $32.5 million to the general fund, with operating revenues totaling $212.2 million and net revenue less prize payout of $83.4 million. These results reflected disciplined cost control and effective prize fund management. During this period, OLG paid nearly $129 million in prizes to players, while our retailers, predominantly small businesses, earned nearly $11.2 million in commissions. Additionally, OLG spent more than $12 million with small business enterprises in the district, surpassing our SBE goal by 5.69%. The impact of regulated gaming extends beyond the DC Lottery. Privately operated sports wagering regulated by OLG under the Sports Wagering Amendment Act of 2024 generated nearly $19.3 million in tax revenue, bringing total regulated gaming transfers to the general fund to more than $51.8 million this year, the highest total since fiscal year 2017. Lottery product trends in fiscal year 25 were mixed. Instant games grew by more than 4% over the prior year, offsetting declines in jackpot games, a trend seen nationally due to fewer large jackpots. Monitor and fast play games also showed growth, while e-instance and number games such as DC 3, 4, and 5 experienced declines, influenced by economic conditions. Despite these shifts, gross gaming revenues increased overall compared to the prior year. Early fiscal year 26 results are encouraging. A record Powerball jackpot of $1.8 billion drove a 33% increase in jackpot game sales and a 67% increase in gross gaming revenue for that category. Overall, total lottery gross gaming revenue for the first quarter of fiscal year 2026 is up more than 3.4% year over year and trending above projections. Retailer engagement remains a priority. After several years of decline, the number of licensed lottery retailers is now higher than at this time last year. This improvement reflects proactive efforts, including hosting our first Retailer Excellence and Appreciation event, forming a retailer advisory committee, and launching a work group focused on recruitment and community engagement. Recent highlights include the launch of multi-state games such as Jackpot USA and Lotto America, the introduction of our first $50 scratch-off ticket, expansion of our Agent Plus program, and the recent debut of Millionaire for Life. We are also proud to have joined the World Lottery Association, and we have recently achieved Level 2 responsible gaming certification from that group. Looking ahead to fiscal year 2026, this will be pivotal. The council will be asked to approve a major contract for OLG's central gaming system and instant ticket operations. This contract will modernize our systems for both traditional and iLottery games and upgrade retail equipment across the district. Ensuring a seamless transition during this 9-month conversion process is critical to maintaining revenue flow. The implementation of the Sports Wagering Act of 2024 transitioned core sports wagering operations into a competitive market with third-party operators. The sports wagering market now includes 6 operators, which offer online wagering district-wide. For fiscal year 2025, a total of 34,763,425 wagers resulted in a handle of $801,878,743, with a payout of $718,572,415 to players. Gross gaming revenue totaled $84,295,586, and the district received $19,391,380 in tax revenue, with 96% of those wagers coming from online. While this model has increased tax revenues from 1.3 million in fiscal year 23 to 19.3 million in fiscal year 2025, the current law has also created a challenge for OLG to absorb the cost of its increased regulatory responsibilities. Sports wagering revenues bypass OLG and are collected directly by the Office of Tax and Revenue. Licensing fees mitigate OLG's regulatory costs to a limited degree, but are inconsistent and cannot be carried over, creating a structural funding gap. Meanwhile, OLG faces growing regulatory responsibilities, licensing, compliance monitoring, geofencing, and responsible gaming protections without proportional funding from private operators. Currently, administrative costs are absorbed by the traditional lottery. This is placing a downward pressure on transfers to the general fund. To address this, OLG recommends that all gaming revenues from private sports wagering, games of skill, commercial bingo, and future gaming activities be directed to the Lottery, Gambling, and Gaming Fund, with council allocating a percentage of gross or net gaming revenue from each gaming line to the OLG for administrative expenses. The remaining funds would be transferred to the general fund or otherwise allocated by the council and mayor in accordance with district law. This approach, successfully implemented in jurisdictions such as Maryland and West Virginia, would provide predictable performance-based funding for oversight while preserving council control over revenue distribution. OLG remains committed to maximizing our returns for the district, providing entertainment for our residents and visitors in a responsible manner, and supporting our local businesses. Thank you, Chairperson Fruman, the council, and the mayor for the continued support of the Office of Lottery and Gaming. This concludes my testimony, and I am happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Director Burnside. I'm glad you're happy to answer questions because I have some here.
I'm happy to answer.
All right. I wanted to start off with one of the largest projects OLG has been working on for the last few months, and that is the deployment of the new central gaming system and iLottery central system. This includes replacing the current operating system for traditional and iLottery in the district. Where in the process is OLG currently on track for the completion of this objective?
Mr. Chairman, because this is currently in a competitive procurement situation, if it's okay with you, I'd like to respond to that question. I'm Ridgely Bennett, I'm Chief Counsel. Currently, we're in the negotiation phase of the competitive procurement, and we anticipate bringing a contract soon. We're very limited in what we can say because of where we currently are.
Okay, and ultimately, how many qualified bidders did we have?
I'm not at liberty to say because of competitive procurement restrictions.
All right, that's going to limit the questions. But let's see. Do you anticipate challenges in this process?
There is always an opportunity to have protests. There was one filed early in the process, and the Contract Appeals Board found in favor of the district.
But setting aside protests in terms of the timeline to achieve and the ability to implement the transition, how are you feeling about that?
Okay, it's my understanding, once the processes are complete through the Office of Contracts, that council should be delivered package probably in the next 2 to 3 months that would be looked upon and voted on. But to answer your question, there will need to be an extension of our current contract with our current vendor to overlap the 12 months period that we will need for the conversion to occur. Both systems will need to operate in parallel. And at the end of the process, the new vendor takes over on the go live date. This plays out across the country every time a lottery contract is awarded in a different jurisdiction. It's a very complicated process. We have the staffing on hand to do what we need to do, but we will have project management involvement from one of our contractors during that time. It's a very heavy lift for our lottery, and any lottery that goes through a conversion, they only happen on average, every 7 to 10 years. So there's a lot that goes into it. But the goal is to have operations not impacted up until the day of the new launch, and all of your retail is ready to go on that day. And hopefully, knock on wood, you don't have any problems and everything goes smoothly.
And this may be a thing that I should know the answer to, but so 2 to 3 months, that's April or May. Should it bleed, you could get to June. The council goes on recess in July. Is the idea that there's typically a hearing on a contract like this?
You better answer that
So
one, Ridley.
the-
History.
The primary term of a proposed contract would be 5 years, so it's a multi-year contract, and it would require active approval by council.
So we also have recess that comes in the middle of this. So we'll all together keep our eye on that kind of timing. But then what you're saying is there's a transition period. In that transition period, how long does that transition period last?
The contract calls for a 9-month deployment of the new system. But based on my experience, those can be delayed and take longer. When you look around the country at different system conversions that are going on now, several have been delayed. It's a very complicated process where your current vendor, if you switch to a new vendor, has to share information and connectivity, and it can take multiple engineering teams from both sides to make that work. So it can be a 9 to 12 month process.
And in that 9 to 12 month process, is it that the new contractor is putting in place machines and but they're not used yet?
Correct. That's
And
part of it.
And then a day comes where they are ready and a switch is flipped and it goes from the old machines and old contract to the new.
Yes.
And it takes 9 months. That's the goal. It's
Yeah.
9 months to achieve that, but it could take longer than
That's
that.
correct. Because you build out your system based on your laws for your jurisdiction. It's not something that you get out of a box ready to go. Every state jurisdiction is unique in some of its laws and functionality. So there's a lot of back end work that goes into making sure that your internal control systems function as they should, your central gaming system functions as it should, and that the whole network works properly, and till the point of sale where a person buys that physical ticket and it operates the way it should and the barcode scans correctly so that that person can validate their ticket.
What do you do in that window to assure integrity? Because it seems like you have a triple load. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but you have to regulate the current operator. You have to regulate the standing up of the new operator, and you have to manage the relationship between the old and the new. So what does that mean in terms of what does that look like on the
Sure.
ground from an OLG perspective?
Well, the good news is there are basically 3 major companies that do this. And those are the 3 companies that are involved in this time and time again in the United States. So they're very well adept at conversions and working together in these processes. But from a security standpoint, nothing changes. They know the rules and regulations that we operate under. They know what the Multi-State Lottery Association expects of the rules that are issued for multi-state lottery sales and so forth. Everything is done to industry standard. I have no worries that any of the potential bidders that would win this contract would operate with integrity to the highest level and make sure that we're doing everything the right way. So that is not a concern. My major concern is just system-wide, whenever you're dealing with something this big that affects more than 400 retail locations in an urban environment, getting your system up and running and networking and everything together, it takes time. And it involves engineering teams. And a lot of times these engineers are in different parts of the world, putting those things together and the coding and the security and so forth. So good project management is a massive part of it. Fortunately, I have experience having been through a conversion in my previous position in another state. So I do understand what goes into it, and our team is ready. We've been preparing for this for a number of years, and we'll make sure that it's done as best as possible.
So I hear you, and I hear you about the confidence that you have in the three operators out there. Can you say who those big three are?
The three big companies that handle central gaming systems are Brightstar, Scientific Games, and Intralot.
Okay, and they do all the games, or
Yeah.
essentially all the games.
Eh.
And I hear you about whatever the confidence that you have in them, but uh, President Reagan started it with trust but verify, but
Correct. And that's what
I
we
hear
do.
you. So, and do you have the horses? How many, do you need more people on your team in order to verify in a period of a transition than you ordinarily would have? And if you do, if those needs are greater, do you have those people in place?
We have actually a third-party organization that specializes in this that we have a contract with, Gaming Labs International. They will assist us in this process. It's one of the many things that they do. We also have our ICS provider, which right now is Elsom Consulting, and they are a leader in ICS systems for lotteries. So they assist in the whole process. It is a lot of work. There's a lot of teams involved, but security is at the forefront and integrity is at the forefront. So I'm very confident we have what we need in place.
So core to making it seamless and, no interruption and done with integrity are these outside consultants that you've brought on that bolster the
They
capacity of your
bolster.
team.
Absolutely. That's a good definition of it.
Okay, and what requirements do you have in place on the current contractor holders and with relation to the transition? What obligations do they face should they not be chosen for the new
They're
contract?
contractually required to work with the new vendor and for there not to be an interruption.
And what is the penalty if they don't comply?
Do you know what the?
So I believe there's, and I would have to go back and check to be certain. I believe there's a provision in the contract that says we withhold certain payments until the transition is complete. But the vendors work together continuously, and they also have reputation. There are only 40-some states that do lottery. No vendor wants to be seen as not being cooperative in a transfer from one vendor to another. But we do have and I can pull the contractual provisions if you'd like to see them, that specifically relate to the transfer.
Well, I have a feeling, I think this will be a thing for us in the coming months. So I think for right now, particularly given the limits on what you're comfortable talking about, I think I'll put a pin in that, but more to follow. Okay, in your pre-hearing response to question 19, you make note of the fact that the enactment of the Sports Wagering Amendment Act of 2024 is a large reason as to why OLG's transfers to the general fund has gone down. And you talked about this a little in your testimony, but can you explain what changes that legislation made to the operations of OLG?
Absolutely. So the amendment took the operations of sports wagering away from the lottery where it was in-house. And the district operated sports wagering with an app itself and made it a competitive marketplace, which we fully support and I think is a good path forward. However, when I arrived here 10 months ago in my position, I had a drawdown of our budget because of the extreme expense of operating a sports wagering operation. The OLG budget was roughly 360 million, I believe, Alex, is that correct? 2 fiscal years ago. We started drawing that down because we no longer do the marketing, player acquisition, the running of an app and so forth. So as our budget decreased, the thought process, I believe, was that licensing fees from the commercial sports wagering side would pay for the regulatory costs that the OLG has when it comes to that. However, I don't think it was foreseen by anyone that the structure of the individual entities wanting to participate in sports wagering in the district we thought there might be more players involved than what came into the district. And so there's no way for the lottery to recoup costs when someone pays a $2 million fee to get their license to operate in the district as a sports wagering operator and hold on to that money from year to year. It immediately goes into the transfer at the end of the year if we don't spend it all. So what I'm looking at in our fees collected from sports wagering, it has gone from 4 million in one year down to a little more than 2 million the next year. And we are now projecting this year that only to be $500,000. So our costs for operating sports wagering are around $2 million a year. So without that consistent revenue, it's putting pressure on our traditional lottery to make up the difference. Now, we did a very good job with our gross gaming revenue this year by how we managed our advertising spend. If you'll look, we reduced our advertising spend by more than $2 million, and that plugged that hole for us in fiscal year 25. Next year, the current year that we're in, we don't have that type of cushion. So it'll be even more imperative on me and my team to generate more revenue to make up that difference. But that is directly a downward force on our transfer.
So you said 4 million, I guess I'm hearing, was that 4 million in FY24 and then 2 million in FY20?
It was, I believe, 4.7 million down to 4.4. Oh, 4.4. It was 4.4 million down to 2.7 million this year.
And those are all licensing fees.
Yes.
And we have 6 operators.
We currently have 6 operators. We literally lose one tomorrow. We have a company withdrawing from our market.
Okay. But was it that the expectation was we'd have 10, and so we'd have that many more licensing?
That
fees?
was prior to my arrival. I'm assuming it was. I think the intent was there would be licensees, there would be more Class B licenses. But what we've seen with the change in the amendment, Class B has now gone away. We literally have only one Class B operator now. And all of the play has moved, 97% of the play has moved to the online environment. And we have what I call it is a maturing market. You have companies that have done a good job of player acquisition and they control the majority of the market. Some of the late comers to our market are not faring as well as others.
Okay. And so then for the coming year, so those licensing fees, are they the same every year, or is
They're
there
not.
Go ahead.
That's a great question, and you absolutely have hit the nail on the head. They have fees that are higher in the first year, and then they decline by 50% for the next renewal period. And so there is a gap. If we don't have a Class A or a Class C operator in a given year, there's a
A
significant
new
loss.
one. So,
Yes.
so if we have five, is it the idea that you said $500,000? So is it $100,000 for the second license, for the
Now,
renewed license?
Peter, the Class C license, what is the initial fee?
Peter Alvarado, Director of Regulation Oversight. For the Class C, the license it's a 5-year term, so they pay $2 million for a 5-year term. When it expires and they renew, it renews for 50%, so it's a million at that point. And then for the existing Class A's that are at the stadiums, the Capital One Arena, Audi Park, Nats Park, their fee is $1 million, and then when they renew, it's 500,000,
Is that also a 5-year term?
5-year term.
Okay. And so there may be no licensing fees for a period of time unless there's a new entrant. And then the next time that there are licensing fees, they'll be lower than they are now.
Correct.
And so, and
That-
you're saying you can't run the operation relating to sports wagering on the anticipated flow of revenue.
Correct.
And then you said that you plugged the hole from your advertising revenue.
We
Your-
reduce spending across the lottery. We don't market for sports wagering at all. All of our marketing is for the traditional lottery. However, I instituted some managerial decisions to maximize as much revenue as we could and cut costs in order to make up that gap this year. That gap will be bigger next year. And it's just from the inconsistency of revenue. I firmly believe that if you have a gaming line that is producing what sports wagering is producing, we just need to figure out the proper mechanism to pay for itself, not cannibalize the other gaming lines.
And your advertising spend, that you have, does changing your advertising spend have any impact on the dollars that come to the district?
It does.
In what way?
A lot of the companies that we spend money with are DC-based companies.
I
Our
see.
advertising contract is with a CBE. So I have to manage that carefully. I do not want to lower or hurt them in any way at the same time. And I would love to have the resources to keep that funding where it's at so that it generates more sales and hopefully gives us the ability to do more responsible gaming advertising as well, public service announcements. Right now, everything that we do RG-wise around campaigns and PSAs, we get as public service freebies from our media partners. We don't pay for those.
And how big is your advertising budget?
It's right around 7.1 million.
So was it at 9.1 and then you
Yes, sir.
lowered it to 7?
It exceeded that.
And so
Now,
In-
some of that did come from sports wagering and the promotion of the Gambit DC app and everything that was related with that too.
oh, so you had a lowered cost for
So,
that.
yeah.
So that helped you.
Yes.
Historically, do you know what the advertising budget has been? Has it been on the scale?
It has been higher. Historically, at one point, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it was around 8 to 10 million on an annual basis. Before the pandemic was even 12 million,
Up to 14 at one point, actually.
14.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there studies that show a correlation between the advertising budget and sales?
No. That there are studies that show that two things drive sales more than anything else, and that's asking for the sale at the point of sale, having your cashiers trained to ask people if they'd like to buy a ticket, and jackpot amounts driving people to the stores that don't usually play. Those are the two major drivers.
But the advertising, Might have an impact, but that's not
Yeah,
perceived to
but
be the major.
there's no direct way to find a correlation. Obviously, when you market a specific game, it should assist and help along that way. And we do our return on investment studies of what we do and so forth. But the main drivers are jackpot amounts and asking for the sale.
So in everything else that you do, does it pay for itself? Does it?
Yes,
So,
every traditional lottery pays for itself.
and how does it do that?
Well, the money that it generates pays for the FTEs and all of the work that goes into that. And then we still have the money left over that becomes the transfer.
And the transfer, is that just the net of revenue and costs, including things like advertising and the FTEs, or is it a set percentage?
It's what we have left
It's
at
what
the
you have
end of the
left.
month after all of those things are paid, and prize payments
So if you,
and commissions as well.
so if you spent more on advertising, then the district would get less unless that advertising
Unless it
resulted.
works and drives more sales.
Okay. And so so it's the net goes to the district.
Yes.
On the sports wagering side, it's not a net approach, it's a percentage, right? It's a percentage tax. So how would you alter it without changing the obligations on the different parties?
So my recommendation would be based on models you see in other states. As a gaming line is successful, a percentage would increase. If you set a percentage amount, let's say 10%, I believe is what some jurisdictions have of gross gaming revenue, are set aside for administrative expenses for the lottery or the regulator who oversees sports wagering. We would not necessarily spend the full 10%. It would be up to 10% that we could possibly use. Our goal is to spend as little as possible to regulate everything properly and maximize that return back to the general fund at the end of the day. That's what we want to do. But my concern is we have a very successful gaming line that we just have this structural imbalance where those fees, the way they're delivered, even if there were a way to restructure the license fees to where they're annual, where we have a consistent flow, that would make it easier to manage. But I don't think this was something that was foreseen. And if you tie it to gross gaming revenue, there'll be less when that gaming line doesn't perform well. If it ever does, that amount taken will be lower. It will be based on the performance of that gaming line. But right now, we have that structure, and it's roughly $2 million that makes it difficult for us.
How much did sports wagering, what was the gross revenue from?
The net to the district was 19.3 million.
But so, and that's 20% of the sales.
Between 20 and 30, because Class A operators are at, Peter, what is it, 20%?
It's actually three. The Class B operators are at 10%, Class B are at 20%, and Class C are at 30%. So it depends on what.
But
Where
the
they-
majority of the play comes
The
from.
majority of the play comes from the online, which is a combination of the Class A and Class C.
Okay. So what you would want is the first 10% comes to you?
No, what I recommend is just 10% a month, or I would like to, ideally, and again, council and the mayor are the ones that have the final say on policy, obviously. But in an ideal world, all gaming revenues, no matter what the source, whether it's games of skill, blackjack, poker, bingo, sports wagering, go into the lottery, gambling, and gaming fund before we transfer it over to the general fund, and that lottery be allotted the possibility to take a percentage of that for operational costs, administrative costs. That's similar to what West Virginia has. I know in West Virginia's sports wagering, they are allowed to take 15% for administrative expenses. It's similar to Maryland's structure as well. And then if you were to add some sort of gaming line, usually that's put into code. That percentage is allowed to be retained by the lottery to pay its expenses. But my goal is to maximize our revenue, because what's happening right now, I'm having to take that 2 million from what would have been transfer to pay for regulation and oversight of sports wagering.
So I guess what I'm wondering about is let's just call it 20 million that went to
Okay.
the district.
Sure.
And are you saying 10% of that so that 2 million came to you? That you could use up to 2 million?
I would prefer it to come from gross gaming revenue so that it doesn't affect the transfer amount to the district, that it would be paid for by the sports wagering operators out of the big number.
So a new obligation on them that they would pay 10%? Is it a new, I guess I'm struggling.
In lieu of the tax rate that, or added into that in some way.
So it would
Out of
replace
the big,
tax-
out of the big share pot, that first, when you go to take the district's aspect, add an additional percentage onto it or include it in it. Either way, I'm happy to work with anybody on the best formula for the district to work, but I don't want to hurt our transfer, nor do I want to necessarily put more burden on our sports wagering folks. So,
But you want to figure out a way that you have that based on the realistic projections about what the revenue is going to be, that 2 million of it finds its way to you predictably so that
Yes.
you can manage oversight.
Yes, sir. Now, that's with the concerns that we have about the CFTC and prediction markets as well being a threat to sports wagering in general. So I do worry about how that is going to play out in the system over time as well.
You're getting a little ahead of my.
I'm sorry,
No,
but
no,
I
no,
just-
but here we are.
Because it
Here we are.
could go away.
Well,
And I want to be aware of that too, that there's a threat to sports wagering.
okay, well, talk to me about that. What is it that, what is the concern that you see in that space?
Well, the CFTC recently filed a brief in a court case in Nevada involving sports wagering prediction markets that took the position that sports wagering is part of the predictions markets and it's regulated by the CFTC. If that wins out in cases, then it puts at risk the entire sports wagering legal markets in the United States for every jurisdiction. And all of our licensees could very well switch over and say, we no longer want to pay the license fees and the things that are necessary to be a sports wagering operator in your jurisdiction. We're just going to offer it through prediction market. That's a concern that I have.
And if they did it through prediction market, you would not be able to regulate them
No,
because of something in DC law or something in federal law.
it would be federal.
So, and where's this case?
It would be federal preemption. The case is currently in Nevada. I think that's the Ninth Circuit that the CFTC filed its amicus brief.
And the district would not have the right to regulate predictive markets because of federal preemption.
It's regulated by the Commodities Future Trading Commission under federal law.
Okay. So we'll get back to this, I think, because there's going to be other questions, but what I'm trying to make sure I've wrapped my head around is you're looking for a predictable path that will get you an additional $2 million so that you can do appropriate oversight and feel like there is a source of funds that you can count on in order to do that.
Yes, sir.
And otherwise, if you can't do that, you have to find the money someplace else in your budget,
Correct.
which last year was a reduction in advertising. Next year, could it be a reduction in advertising again?
Yes, we're working. There's not many places we can reduce further.
Okay. And, but the conundrum is you need to find a way to do this where it doesn't have an adverse effect on the district
Correct.
and does not add an additional burden to the providers who just entered into 5-year contracts under specific terms, which it would seem hard to change in the middle.
Absolutely.
So how one squares that circle is a challenge, but that's the thing
Yeah.
that you're trying to do.
I'm just raising the alarm to let people know that this is a real structural issue that we have within that operation.
Okay. And even if this can't happen, are you looking at increasing funding or taking funding from someplace else in order to allocate a greater amount to
Yeah,
oversight?
we have to. If you'll look at our projected transfer amounts for the future, we've lowered those to compensate.
So it is having it is having an adverse impact on
The transfer
The
from
transfer.
OLG. Now, with that understanding, the district is receiving more money than it has in a long time from gaming, but you're not seeing it come from the OLG transfer. You're seeing that 20 million roughly going straight to tax, not lottery.
so that goes up, but then the transfer from lottery
Yes.
goes down because your operating costs go up, meaning that the net is lower.
Yes, sir. You understand. You've got it.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of numbers that we'll have to track through as we try to think about, is there a way to get you to the kind of
Thank you.
predictability? that
I
you're
appreciate
talking
that.
about? And this goes to what I was asking about on the lottery side and the transition. And we want a free market. We want to have a number of operators, but we have to have really strong oversight. And so what's your oversight team over sports wagering look like today?
We have a team that actually Mr. Alvarado here to my right heads our oversight and regulatory division. We have several investigators that oversee not just sports wagering, but games of skill, all forms of gaming in the district, including dealing with our regular lottery retailers as well. Peter, how many full-time employees do you have in your division right now?
I have in the division, I have 23, including myself. And if I segregate that between lottery and sports wagering is 13 FTEs of the 23. And then that doesn't include what we have to do in terms of the IT support that has to be given. So IT employees have to give support to the sports wagering slide as well. And then we have legal that reviews whether it's a licensing or enforcement action, that also has staff, legal counsel that provides advice to us on legal matters on sports wagering. So that's roughly an overview of the FTEs.
So how's that changed over time? So when it was just one operator, how many folks did you have doing oversight over that?
When we just had one operator, let's just say the district-wide, the Gambit DC. At that time, we also had 6 Class Bs, physical locations plus the 3 Class A's of the stadiums. And so it was, the work shifted when we opened the market up to the Class Cs, and we had the Class A's also run their mobile app district-wide. We had a shift with the Class Bs, all but one is still in business. And so our work shifted now to these Class Cs that required a different type of compliance work, a lot dealing with geolocation, geofencing, looking at their mobile app systems. Are they working? Are they in compliance with our rules and regulations? And so the work shifted a bit from sort of land-based to more mobile-based.
And the same number of people, or the same people, or new people because there was a new expertise needed?
It's generally the same people. I think what probably put a bit of stress is that we also, at the same time, we brought on games of skill. And so we were licensing games of skill. So my staff then now had to go back out in the retail environment to conduct, we not only do the licensing, but also the inspections of the locations where games of skill are located, doing the audits. So it shifted, and now we're getting ready because we also have commercial bingo that we just we're looking at, that was passed, and now we're looking at potential commercial bingo locations. And so it's the staff I have for sports wagering, that is my staff for commercial bingo, that is my staff for games of skill.
And is it the same as 2 years ago, or is it different than 2 years ago?
It's roughly the same. Yeah.
And the workload is different, but is the magnitude of the work similar?
I think the workload is about the same. It was just a transition from retail to mobile on the sports wagering side. I think what we see is an increase in the area of games of skill. And that's where we're having more, and then also having to dedicate resources to commercial bingo to prepare ourselves for that. That is where we're getting stretched, because we're also doing that. And then we still have inquiries for potentially another sports wagering operator coming in. And so we have to prepare, and we have suppliers that the onset of the Class Cs and the mobile app, that brought on a lot more suppliers in the sense of these are payment processors that process the payments for these companies, that do the due diligence behind know your customer in the background. And so all those, it's increased the number of sports wagering applications that we receive from the supplier side. And so we're processing those too. So the workload didn't necessarily stop just because the retail sort of shut down. It got moved, and we got an increase in the supplier side.
Okay. So I'm not trying to be obtuse. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand where the gap comes from. So perhaps the gap comes from when it was Game Bet, the money flowed through OLG, you kept a percentage, and that was like $2 million. And then now it doesn't flow through OLG. You're not getting that $2 million. You have the same level of oversight that needs to be funded, but you've lost a revenue source.
Correct.
And so it's not requirements have gone up. The need for oversight hasn't changed. The level of oversight needed hasn't changed. The nature of the oversight has been moving around in different ways, but the revenue to support it has gone away, and that's
Correct.
the gap that you want to fill.
And this is not just sports wagering. I want to make that clear too. Games of skill, we have no way of recouping costs other than what's paid there in their license fees, which I think accounts for only $36,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken there, Alex. So we're seeing this with the last couple of legislative acts that involved gaming. There's not a consistent mechanism for OLG to take care of administrative costs.
And on those things, on sports wagering, you had it. It was done in a certain
Yeah.
way and it had a revenue flow to support it.
Yes.
For games of skill, that's new, but it does not come with an associated revenue source to fund oversight.
Correct.
And so the effect of that will be you need to spend more of your other dollars and your net to the district from other sources of gaming will go down because you're using those dollars to fund oversight over these new unfunded mandates for oversight on these other programs.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think we're gonna change. I think I got it.
I think you do. I appreciate that.
So the market for lottery and gaming is like many other industries, rapidly evolving towards digital platforms. Throughout your pre-hearing responses, you make reference to the fact that iLottery games and online sports wagering are increasingly taking over the market and pushing physical retailers out of the same space. What impact are those trends having on the revenue OLG generates for the general fund?
They're having a positive impact. They're helping to a degree offset some of our decline that you see in other parts of our portfolio. We have been working very diligently in the last year to identify best practices that we can use in our iLottery program to increase revenue. I'm happy to report that for the last 4 or 5 weeks in our sales, we're starting to see some positives. I do want to point out that we are very heavy in our portfolio when it comes to the DC 3, 4, and 5 games. Those are popular numbers games. In most jurisdictions in the country, your instant tickets are the big driver of revenue. However, we are opposite here in the district. I think it has to do with our history and tradition of playing the numbers here in DC. But if you look at per capita amounts, we are number 1 in the country in per capita play of the numbers games, those District 3, 4, and 5 games. Those players are traditionally over the age of 55. And as they pass on, we see a consistent decline. You see it in almost every lottery in the world, those types of games. It used to be that players would age into that group, but now that you have so many offerings, such as your iLottery, games that you can play on your phone that aren't lottery games, things that take the entertainment dollar away from those games, just the competition that's out there, whether it's sports wagering, whether it's, anything that you would play on your mobile phone or those sorts of things impacting it. So we have seen some good growth in our iLottery. And the thing that I would like to really point out about our numbers this past year, along the lines of what you're saying with our iLottery, we've got more people playing. We've increased the amount of registrations we've had in the past year. We've increased the first-time depositor amounts that we've had. We have more people playing. They're just playing less. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I want to make that clear.
Okay, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit of a trick question because I think iLottery sounds like those are dollars that flow through OLG. And so then
They are.
then those dollars go to the general fund. And so the increase in iLottery increases the amount of money that OLG is sending to this,
Correct.
to the general fund. Whereas the sports wagering used to flow through OLG, but now the online sports wagering is growing, but has a separate track to the general fund. So the general fund is benefited, but it's not OLG. So it may be that the two things together result in a decline of OLG contribution to the general fund, even if gaming writ large now has a larger contribution to
Correct.
the general fund.
Yes, this is an oversight issue as far as our ability to uh, oversee those gaming lines without negatively impacting the traditional lottery, which is literally paying for it right now. So any increase that we see up to whatever our deficit was this year of roughly, let's say it was 1.4 million that we no longer saw from sports wagering revenues that would pay for sports wagering. We had to take that from iLottery, or we had to take that from our traditional lottery to handle the oversight. I'm just a firm believer that a gaming line should support itself.
Okay, yep. I'm having a slip back to
Yeah.
the old conversation. I think we have covered that. How much revenue does OLG project it will generate for the general fund this year in this fiscal year 26?
Alex, what's our latest number?
Projected should be about 30 million.
And that's from OLG, and then
From
sports
OLG.
wagering, how much is sports wagering projected to deliver?
We expect sports wagering to exceed 20 million this year on the commercial side.
And do you know in the budget last year when we built the budget, what was the projection for the two together?
On the OLG side, I think the goal was 32.5, which we exceeded. On the sports wagering side, I'm not sure. I don't quite have that number, what the goal was for transfer.
Oh, I thought that you said it's going to be 30.
Do you mean last year, like fiscal year
No,
25 or
fis-
26?
26.
26, yeah, so 30.
30.
Yes.
So-
25, we did 32.5.
And in the FY 26 budget, do you know what we budgeted as the projected revenue from OLG?
Projected revenue, so when you say
Projected contribution to the general.
30
fund.
million, 30 million.
So, and you think you're going to hit
Yes.
that 30
Yeah,
million?
well,
You
we
don't,
could get a little bit more than that, but yes, we projected 30 million.
but if anything, a little bit more, but not
Yes.
necessarily a lot
Correct,
more.
correct, correct.
Okay, and then in terms of sports wagering, the projection is it'll be 20.
Yes.
And was that what was projected in the budget last year? For the budget for FY 26, what was the anticipated contribution to the general fund from sports wagering?
So the way the budget is structured, we don't break out sports wagering and iLottery and traditional lottery. It's just one general transfer number that we try to hit. And that transfer number was $30 million. But that number trickles down from the revenue of all the traditional lotteries and our expenses down to the transfer.
He's asking.
I think just to clarify, there are two sources. One is what OLG transfers to the
Right.
general fund. The other is the tax revenue
Right.
that's collected by OTR. It doesn't hit our books, so it may be that Alex doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so
Correct.
you don't recall what the projection
Correct.
was?
That doesn't channel through us at all.
Okay,
I'm just making an educated guess based on the number I saw this year, that it should grow to, based on what we're seeing so far in the tax receipts, that it should exceed 20 million.
and for my part, I need to look, that's a number I can find what it was projected to be. Okay.
Yeah, OTR should have that.
And the 30 is down from the 32.5, and some of that is because game bet is not in there, but still game bet, I think you said delivered 1.4, so it's still down one from you take game bet out, it would have been 31, and now we're predicting 30. And is that related to, there's increases in some places, but there's decreases in the numbers games?
We are still downsizing our budget from the Amendment Act of 2024. We are going from a budget of roughly 350 million down to a budget that now is in the neighborhood of 210 million. So what we have to factor into the line of thinking is there were massive costs and contracting costs involved in operating sports wagering ourselves
Right.
that are now gone. So those are gone. But in the breakout of retooling people, positions and so forth to make the reality of today, we have fewer dollars to deal with, and it just makes management very very important that we manage every dollar that we have to make sure everything gets met, because we don't have that revenue just sitting there that you could take from.
Okay, so.
And we don't
we're-
get tax dollars. If we can't generate it in sales, then we go without. We
Uh,
have to meet our obligation to council and to the general fund first and foremost. So, I'm in a position right now where I have restricted some of our travel for meetings and so forth that have to do with sports wagering oversight, responsible gaming and so forth, because I'm literally managing to that level, maximizing what we return to make up for these situations.
So I hear you, and it all comes back to some of that other conversation, but I guess what I am hearing is there's a bunch of moving parts.
Yes.
Um, big thing, sports wagering comes out of your budget, comes out of the revenue that you can draw from to cover your costs. That all comes out, your budget
Yeah.
shrinks a lot. Then revenue from some games goes up, revenue from other games goes down, but then the pressure to cover your costs from those games, including oversight over sports wagering, means that you have to be spending more money to cover something that you're not getting revenue for.
Correct.
And so then the net on that side may end up, even if overall
The district
revenue
is doing well.
stayed the same, you have to pay more costs out of that revenue to do the functions that you need to do. And so the net to the district ends up going down by a certain amount, which is why you're saying if each line were supporting itself and traceable in the way in which it supported itself, you would have more predictability and there would be.
And the money would be the same, because that 2 million from here goes there and it still transfers to the general fund. at the end
Okay,
of the day.
so this is a mapping project that we should
Yes.
sit down and you explain to me how a structure works where it creates the predictability but does not adversely affect the district or the operators.
Right.
Okay. So you talked about, in terms of the lottery itself, does OLG, has there been a decline in lottery revenues?
No, sales are down, but our revenues are actually up more than 5%.
So help me understand that.
The overall payout percentages on different games, just how it has happened, fewer people play, fewer people win. Things like that occur. We've also been managing our portfolio better. We're retiring a few games that are low performers. We're adding new games that perform better in our iLottery space, for instance. We've launched several new multi-state lottery games that I'm very confident will do well, that will help drive revenue and help offset some of our losses from those numbers games.
So, and you talked about the numbers games being, people aging out or,
That's a big part of it.
and so what are you doing to respond to this changing demand and demographics?
A lot of research, a lot of listening and talking to our players and our retailers. We've put a lot into it in the last year. Like I said, this decline is universal. It's around the globe when it comes to these numbers games. So no one has an answer. There are ways to generate revenue by doing like an add-on where someone pays an extra dollar, but that doesn't bring new people into that game. So we've got some creative ideas. Our marketing team has done a great job of trying to solve this problem, and we've kind of taken it upon ourselves to be the ones that solve the problem for the rest of the country when it comes to this. Our instant ticket folks are going to launch a unique ticket that ties the two together. Our DC 3, 4, and 5 games are going to be in the instant ticket form. And when players scratch off, they win chances to play and in the numbers game arena, which will introduce hopefully new players to the numbers games and maybe create a possible synergy there where we can drive some new play. So that's one aspect of some things that we're looking at in our marketing, how we approach it. I've made things very DC centric. I want to be part of the community. I want people to feel that the lottery is involved and plugged in to the different wards, to our fairs and festivals, to the community. We've entered into some really unique partnerships, and through those avenues, playing on the cultural significance of the numbers games in DC, maybe to drive younger people to try it. That's another aspect. So it's available on our iLottery platform. But at the same time, when you have increased play in your e-instant area, that's good too. That helps offset that decline. But we're just in a situation where we have to diversify our portfolio. And we have not done that for a long time. We've been dependent on those same 3 games. And we have now diversified to 200 games at multiple price points, and we're starting to see growth in a lot of areas. So there's a lot of good that's down the road. But right now, that decline is painful because of the percentage of the portfolio dedicated to it.
I mean, it's an interesting thing, and I have to say that sitting here and having this conversation, be candid, when I hear the advertising budget went down, I have mixed feelings about it.
That's
because-
understandable because of
and-
responsible gaming.
Because and the idea is that we want to maximize revenue, responsibly maximize revenue, and then I know that you don't mean teenagers, but when you say, marketing games that could increase access to for younger people.
We stay away from anyone under the age of 18. Absolutely. We will never sponsor youth league activities or anything like that. I'm a father myself. I've got a 19-year-old and a 13-year-old. I would not want that. Absolutely. I understand. Our target audience are 20 and above for the most part.
And so when you look at potential new games, do you look at which demographics that it looks
Absolutely.
like that will be?
We do all kinds of studies. Our partners that are our ticket producers, our vendor of record for our gaming system and so forth, for iLottery, we look at all of those things. What drives people to play, how much you're spending on player acquisition, where they come from, who they are. The iLotteries that are very successful are ones that have that great relationship management tool with it, to where you know your customer and know their tendencies and so forth. We have not gone down that path fully here in DC. We were one of the early iLottery jurisdictions. But we have not done a robust players rewards program that incentivizes play like several of our peer jurisdictions have. That's a logical next step for us. Taking our players club, we have roughly 50,000 people in our players club that have signed up to receive notifications from the lottery, winning number alerts, and we use them. We ask them for feedback. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What games do you like? How can we make our games better? But we can take that to the next level and create increased sales by encouraging people to go to retail and help our retailers, our small businesses, by, hey, if you buy ticket A, we'll give you 300 points in a points-based economy on our website to get lottery swag or second chance opportunities to win money that way. So there's certain synergies that we're working on and working toward getting that I think will enhance our revenue.
I mean, my gut reflects a lot of folks, and it's just an inherent tension in what you do, I think. And that is, to the extent that gambling has always been out there, regulated and let the jurisdiction benefit from it. But a level of discomfort about encouraging new people to gamble, because that's a different thing. And so all the things that you're talking about sound reasonable, but they come into that tension of, we want to capture a market that exists, but how much do we want to be in the business of expanding gambling? And I hope that that's a tension that you always are aware of
Absolutely. Responsible gaming is at the forefront of what we do. And as a state regulator, we care about our people. Our people are why we exist, right? I want what's best for the residents of the District of Columbia more than anything. So that's what makes state and the district lottery different from what you might see from private industry in other areas. We're tasked with generating revenue for our people, but at the same time, protecting our people from the dangers of addiction when it comes to gaming. Now, the good news is when you look at the statistics and you look at our oversight and what we do with responsible gaming, the people on our exclusion list is relatively a small number. The amount of protections that we put on our online lottery and what we regulate that our sports wagering providers do are significant. There's age verification, there's bank verifications, there are timeouts that if someone has a problem, they can exclude themselves. They can give themselves a cooling off period. There are a lot of things that are put in to protect that. But at the end of the day, when you look at the statistics and the research, you're talking about roughly 2 or 3% of the population that suffers from addiction tendencies, from what I've read.
2 or 3% of the overall population, or 2 or 3% of the people who participate in the lottery and
2 to 3% of players.
of players.
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
Now,
But
now we do see with sports wagering an increase in self-exclusions with young men. That is a trend that you're seeing across the country as sports wagering has proliferated. You do see more young men impacted into things that usually historically were more 50-50.
Interesting. Okay, iGaming has been raised as the next frontier for gaming, ripe for regulation. What opportunities and challenges do you see in legalizing iGaming? And if it were legalized and regulated, how much revenue would you project the district could receive as a result based on comparable markets? And in the yin yang thing, what risks do you see from?
I do not have any reservations when it comes to iGaming. In my experience, as long as it's regulated properly and taxed properly, it can be very beneficial to a jurisdiction. I know in the 7 or 8 jurisdictions that allow iGaming, they have had consistent year-over-year tax growth from that. I know in West Virginia that it has grown year-over-year significantly. I believe that it has not negatively impacted or cannibalized their iLottery as much as might have been assumed, but there is the potential for that with iGaming. We could see some decline in our e-instance with that happening, but I would not be adverse to it. I think it's a logical technological next step that could drive revenue for the district. I hate to put a number out there, chairperson, because I don't like making promises that we can't meet. And so I don't want to do that, but based on other jurisdictions, a lot of it depends on your tax rate. I think it could be successful, but it's online casino gaming. That's what it is. Understand that. But it's in a highly regulated way. The providers are strong in their responsible gaming background. We already have all of the infrastructure in place as far as RG requirements on our sports wagering operators. It would be easy for them to stand up an online casino rather quickly with their apps already being active in the district for sports wagering. So if the council and the mayor would want to go that direction in the future, I think it's logical if you want to drive revenue.
Are there studies if folks looked at impacts on levels of addiction, gambling addiction, where there is iGaming that is legalized in a jurisdiction?
I'm not aware of any overall. I do know of just internal numbers that I saw in my previous job at West Virginia Lottery. The increase was not significant from that aspect. When you look at calls to their problem gambling help network, what they saw the biggest increase from was sports wagering when it launched, but they were so close together, there's no way really to parse those out to say, but they did see an increase from the problem gambling aspect of calls to their helpline when that was
When
launched.
sports wagering,
When sports wagering and iGaming launched, they were very close
they
together.
were, I mean, that could also be in part that when they were legalized, the call centers were publicized as
Yes.
part of it.
They
and
spend $1.5 million a year in West Virginia advertising about how to get help through their helpline. So that's significant amount of spend. They do commercials every year and so forth to let people know if they have a problem, there's help available.
Okay, in terms of iGaming, what oversight challenges are associated with iGaming? Does OLG currently have the capacity to meet those challenges, or would additional resources be needed?
We have the capacity to meet. We may need to add some assistance to the two gentlemen to my right as far as finance and auditing of those entities, but it's very similar to sports wagering, depending on how it would be structured.
But I guess I'm assuming you wouldn't want to see a structure like sports wagering where all the
No.
money went over to.
Ideally, and again, if I had my wish, and I know that that's not necessarily what drives things here, all gaming revenue would go through that gaming fund, and we would just be able to take a percentage of it before the transfer to the general fund. But I'm happy to do whatever council and the mayor want to do. We'll make it work. Just please understand that there will be a reduction over here, but you'll be seeing the fruits of that in the tax transfer.
In iGaming, to what extent is iGaming happening in the district now?
You have sweepstakes, you have illegal operators, but it's not real iGaming. You have offshore companies that operate in this gray area, and you'll see them on social media and online. They're extremely difficult to deal with legally. You could fire off cease and desist letters. I know we've identified 13 that I'm considering cease and desist letters to, but district law as it's written right now makes it difficult to go after those people. We don't have anything in code that specifically applies to that type of gaming. I believe firmly that it exists outside of our sports wagering laws. But the minute we send a cease and desist letter, I also know we're going to be sued. And is the Attorney General, wanting to deal with that? And does the district want to deal with that? A lot of other states they are fighting those battles. I'm very supportive of that. I believe this realm should be highly regulated, and we need to protect our citizens from these types of entities.
And is there an indication that significant numbers of our citizens are taking advantage of these offshore iGaming and other?
If you look at different
Opportunities?
studies that have been done by groups like the American Gaming Association, it's significant. It's billions of dollars across the country. So yes, district residents would be impacted, I can imagine. I can't say for sure how much is actually being spent. But I do know that since I've moved here, 10 months ago, I get served these ads on my mobile device daily from these entities that I think are gray area. So if it's happening to me, I'm 100% sure it's happening to other residents as well. And that doesn't benefit the public good in any way. Back to your earlier statement about responsible gaming. The great thing about a regulated industry with a strong lottery or gaming control board is you have protections in place, you have it regulated, and you have common good that comes from it. The revenue goes to the good things that you appropriate it for from the general fund. These entities, we see nothing positive from.
I mean, this goes to what I was saying before about attention, where there's something illegal that is happening and it's happening, better to have it regulated and benefiting. So
Sure.
I hear you. Then you get to the other side of the coin, which is not wanting to be in the business of encouraging people who otherwise would not engage in the behavior, or certainly working to make sure that people don't get addicted.
Yeah. There's a fine line that we toe. Absolutely.
And so predictive markets again, recently there's been significant growth in predictive markets, primarily related to sports wagering. And you talked a little bit about this, but what are your concerns in the predictive market space? And what kinds of steps are you able to take in this predictive market space? Sounds like this is not an area where we could say, well, it's an illegal market, we're going to legalize it and regulate it because of federal preemption. But talk to me about how predictive markets are fitting into the landscape that you're dealing with as the Office of Lottery and Gaming.
Okay. In a nutshell, predictive markets, I think, are a direct threat to our sports wagering structure. If the courts uphold what the CFTC commissioner said last week, originally? Last week, then why would a private sports operator pay a license fee and have the responsible gaming apparatus that we require by law and by rule on them when they could just acquire a predictive markets app and do it all for free without paying any taxes to a state or to the district?
Would they then be regulated by the CFTC though? Is
Yes.
that what the CFTC is saying?
The CFTC is basically saying that how many rebounds that Matt Fruman has in a basketball game is like the same as
Pork belly.
predicting. Yeah.
But would they then allow it, or would they
They-
regulate it?
they-
What are they doing?
They're saying that it is already allowed and it's happened. So states are fighting it. We have not joined that fray. We have been watching as Maryland, New Jersey, other states take action to try to fight that in court. I know that there's been some court victories. Maryland had one recently against the predictive markets and their sports wagering law. But at the end of the day, we have sort of been in a wait and see mode along with several other jurisdictions, letting this play out in court to see what comes from it. But my concern is if this goes the wrong way for what's in the best interest of the states and the District of Columbia, we will be losing out on all of our sports wagering revenue because you already see the sports wagering providers buying up predictive market apps.
And so, I mean, if it were I would expect that the CFTC would somehow regulate it. They regulate all the other markets
Sure.
that they operate in. Do they have regulations in place for predictive markets for sports wagering?
I don't want to speak to that. I'm not real sure what they do have. I just know that they exist in other jurisdictions and it's happening.
And then this court case, does the court case come down to, and I guess I'm looking at the lawyer, does the court case come down to predictive markets in sports wagering? Are they the equivalent of pork bellies, or are they different and therefore outside of the purview of the CFTC? Is that the question on the table in the courts? And
Yes, that's the exact question.
so that could break either way.
That could break either way. I think you're seeing different opinions in different circuits, federal circuits. And so, it may not be settled until it reaches the Supreme Court. It's just interesting to watch right now.
Whoa. This is a decision
So,
that will.
for example, in Maryland, they've won in district court on
Who has won?
the state of Maryland,
Uh-huh.
Maryland lottery,
Hmm.
on a injunction that they've tried to issue. And then in Nevada, it's up on appeal to the Ninth Circuit, and that is where the CFTC filed its amicus brief. So it's being litigated in different circuits within the United States, and you are getting differing opinions in different circuits.
We could face a world, and help me here. We could face a world in which there were determination that predictive markets and sports wagering are like pork bellies and governed by the CFTC and federally preempted.
Correct. And if you remember, this really kind of started with predictive markets on things like the outcomes of elections.
Right.
And things like that. And it has progressed over to items like sports betting. So it's expanding.
And there's a line that, in a certain sense, your prediction about what the price of a pork belly is a gamble. And so can see where the argument comes from, but you could have a determination that this is like pork bellies, and so federal. You could have a decision that it is not, and so state, in which case we could be presented with a question of, like iGaming, should we legalize and regulate it?
Well,
Is
if
that-
it's not within the purview of the CFTC, we already do have legalized and regulated sports betting.
Right,
So that would be our way to regulate sports betting.
sports betting,
Right.
but predictive markets are how many passes will Joe Schmo catch in this?
And-
But we don't have that.
To
And
some extent, we could allow for those types of wagers if we wanted to under the Sports Betting Act that we have, because it is determinative on the outcome of a sporting event or something that happens within a sporting event. So you could, but right now the real concern is this something that's preempted by the CFTC, that they're going to regulate sports betting throughout the United States, or is this something for the states and the district to regulate and tax?
No, I hear you. Director, you were going to say something.
The other aspect of this are states where sports betting is illegal, and this is going on there. So those states are highly involved as well. because a state like Texas, where you're not allowed to have sports betting, you now have sports betting happening through the predictive markets.
And the state has no power over it. Yeah, I hear you on the fear about losing authority to regulate it, but I also, right now, I'm not hearing from anybody saying we should move into the predictive markets world, but we can't. But if the court case broke in a different way, that question would find itself on the table for us.
Yes.
Yeah, if I could just add something, a relevant point on this right now. If you look at our licensed operators right now that offer sports wagering via mobile app, 3 of them have prediction market apps. So 3 of them are already offering prediction markets out there. They offer it in the district on non-sports contracts. So they are out there offering it in other jurisdictions, but in jurisdictions where they're already licensed as a sports wagering operator, they only offer the non-sports wagering contracts as they do here in the district. So as Randy was saying, it's an easy switch if this were to go the way of preemption down the road. Half of our operators already have that prediction market app.
But is it being used in the district?
Yes.
Yes,
Just not on sports.
just not on sports
In-
contracts.
in
So if I
juris-
go to FanDuel and I could bet on a game, but I could also do a predictive market about a predictive bet about the outcome of an election in California? Yes,
Yeah, you could,
today.
up at financial economic predictions, you could go on there on the,
one of their apps.
on
They
one of
may
their
not
apps
be the same
and
app.
yeah, then you could do that.
And are we regulating that or are we, no?
Comes into the CFTC.
CFTC.
I see. So they're doing it, but not under our auspices.
Now, what
And so
they've
that-
done in jurisdictions where there is legalized sports wagering, they will continue to operate their sports wagering operation under the laws of that jurisdiction. Now, they've also added this other avenue for non-sports related contracts because right now, under the law, it's okay to do so.
Okay. What role does OLG play in addressing safe, accountable gaming with this shift in the marketplace, and such as the predictive markets that are out there in sports wagering? What kinds of things are you doing?
We do the same things that we've always done. First and foremost, responsible gaming is at the forefront of what we do. We have a full-time employee, Donna White, who is dedicated to responsible gaming. We do trainings of all of our retailers every year. Our staff goes through a training every year. It's Responsible Gaming Month. We're about to go through those training now for all 97 of our full-time employees, where we get updated on the latest best practices and so forth. We work with the NCPG, the National Council on Problem Gambling, to operate our helpline here in the district. We work with the Department of Behavioral Health and have touch points with them on people getting treatment who have problems. We operate our self-exclusion list for the district and all of the apps. So if someone self-excludes from one of our apps, whether it's BetMGM or FanDuel, it's all coordinated through OLG, the self-exclusion. We track our self-exclusion list. We take part in campaigns every year around the holidays about responsible gifting. We take part in underage campaigns to prevent underage playing to occur. These are built into our system, and I'm proud to report that we recently attained level 2 certification through the World Lottery Association for our responsible gambling program. It's a 4-level process that's very intense. We've done a gap analysis of lottery's responsible gaming apparatus, and we've achieved that level 2 certification, which is something that not every U.S. lottery has. And we are working toward level 3, and we will attain level 4 in the coming years as we grow and become more robust along those best industry practices. So that is something that we take very, very seriously.
Okay, well, and glad to hear it. You offer a self-exclusion program for those who acknowledge they might need to refrain from engaging in sports wagering or other gambling activities. However, this program is voluntary and requires the individual seeking exclusion to enroll themselves in the program, not a third party, such as a partner or family member. Without revealing any identity information, how many individuals are currently enrolled in the self-exclusion program? And of those, do you have a sense of how many are DC residents?
Yes, sir. So our self-exclusion program has been in place since May of 2020. Initially, all self-exclusions were required to be in person, and you had to go to the OLG headquarters to self-exclude. And this proved to be a major barrier for a lot of our players. So in the first 2 years of that, only 1 or 2 individuals self-excluded. We changed that process in 2022, where players can now self-exclude online, and we added appropriate controls. And as of January 27th of this year, we have 86 self-exclusion applications, and we've approved 84 of them. The 2 were denied because the individuals did not provide the required legal identification to do so. So based on those 84 approved applications, we have a breakdown. 34.5% are from the District of Columbia, 33.3% are from Virginia, 20% from Maryland, and the remainder from various other states.
So, okay, and do you have age and age
sir.
data?
I do.
What does that look like, the age data?
When you look at the breakdown, the average overall age is 34. The average age of men is 33 and women 47. Our self-exclusion is skewing toward men because 91% of all of our applications so far have been males.
Wow. I mean, before you talked about propensity to addiction among folks in the gaming pool, and it was 2 or 3%. And I would imagine that probably at least 100,000 people how many people participate in the different programs?
Are you talking about sports wagering or all of it?
All of it.
Some of them are crossover, but if you look at the different accounts with our sports wagering partners, and then you were to look at the Lottery Players Club and iLottery, you're looking at a number probably around 400,000.
So, I mean, 400,000, let's just call it 300,000 just to be conservative.
Okay.
And you said 2 or 3%, and let's use 2%.
And we have
That's-
84 people in our self-exclusion.
Yeah, so, but that's 6,000 people in 84 in the self-exclusion list. So it's good. It's good that we offer it, but the pool of people at risk is probably significantly higher.
It could be, yes.
Okay. How are retailers of the lottery and the app providers alerted to an individual being enrolled in the program?
Peter, do you want to take that one, or would you like me? Okay.
I'll take that. It's difficult in the retail context because much of the play that goes on in retail, whether it's on lottery or whether it's sports wagering with the machines and stuff, is conducted anonymously. So a retailer may not know that the person in front of them is that's buying a lottery ticket is on the self-exclusion list. They may not know. How they find out, it's a couple of ways. Is that if they have a winning that's over 600, where they have to come into the lottery to claim the prize, it will be flagged there because they're on our list to be flagged if they are, if they win and if their name comes up. So it's a little harder in the retail context. This is where the mobile app is much easier to manage from a responsible gambling point of view, because aside from the players being able to self-exclude themselves online, all the retailers, when we get that list, that list that we carry, the 84 folks that are on it, every time we add or subtract there, we push out a new list through an encryption out to the operators, and they integrate it into their player to make sure that those players aren't allowed to play, to set up an account, or if they have an account, make sure it's deactivated. Also, it's through their marketing, so they won't be marketed to them. In that context, self-exclusion when it comes to mobile apps is a lot easier to handle than the retail side, where a lot of it's anonymous. And you're hoping, I mean, in the self-exclusion process, when we go through it with them, we list out everything they're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to play lottery. You're not allowed to play sports wagering or any gambling, and you are not allowed to buy tickets. You won't be paid if you have a winning ticket and you will not be paid. And so they're clearly, and they all have to affirmatively sign all the restrictions that they have, and for whatever period of time that they selected to self-exclude, whether it was 1 year, 18 months, 3 years, or 5 years, or lifetime.
Okay, so when I hear you, I mean, it's a challenge. And so for the buying of a ticket where you go, like, I hear you, the app, it's easier to track. Buying a ticket, you're not asked your name when you buy a ticket.
Yeah.
You may or may not be asked your name when you cash it. Are you asked, or if it's over?
If it's under $600, you're
You're
not
not.
asked. It's just not taxable.
And I'm not trying to be difficult here, but if it's a big winning ticket, then you should know not to go yourself, but to have somebody else. I don't know. I mean, the idea that you wouldn't be paid, there has to be a way to for folks to work around that, but maybe I'm wrong.
We do have restrictions against fraudulently trying to claim a prize. Prize winnings are not assignable. You also run into tax problems because the IRS is going to tax that
Whoever.
prize to the person who claims the prize. So there are a number of safeguards in place that would, make it harder for somebody to have somebody else claim for it.
Okay, so for retailers, you would not be notified if somebody tried because they wouldn't know. But for the apps, if somebody on the self-exclusion list tried to use one of the apps, would the provider alert you to the fact that somebody had tried who was on the self-exclusion list?
Yes, we communicate with them and tell them that if you have instances where somebody is tried to establish an account who's on the self-exclusion list, and you deny them because they're on the self-exclusion list, they're supposed to report it to us so that we can conduct an investigation. I'll probably reach back out to the person who we self-excluded and remind them that they're not allowed to engage in sports wagering in the district. It's not a crime in the district. In other jurisdictions like Maryland, it is a crime, but not here.
And if somebody already had the app and then they registered for the self-exclusion and then they tried to use the app, would you be alerted to it, or do they have to remove the app?
The operators will deactivate their account. They'll pay them whatever's in the account in terms of whatever balance is it. When they get the notice from us that this person has now self-excluded, they will go ahead, they'll deactivate it, sort of close the account. And they don't, I'm trying to think, I don't think they necessarily alert us that they've closed the account. They just do it. We do proactively, we do audits of the operators to see whether things like our marketing materials being sent out to the folks that are on the self-exclusion list do they have open accounts of people that are on the self-exclusion list, which they shouldn't. So we do periodic test verification that way.
Okay, and I can voluntarily put myself on the self-exclusion list. Can I at any time decide I want to be taken off the self-exclusion list? Is it-
Not, if you, as an example, if you put yourself on the self-exclusion list for 1 year, you select the 1 year, you can take yourself off that list before that 1 year.
Okay,
And then you cannot take, it doesn't you don't automatically come off the list. You have to notify us of your desire to get off the list.
but you
make a
have to
request.
wait the year if you've chosen a year.
If you've
And is
chosen-
there an option for a longer period?
The 18 months, 3 years, 5 years, and a lifetime. I think, I've been looking at the statistics. 47% of the folks who self-exclude elect 5 years, and 35% elect lifetime.
Really?
So those are the two most popular choices.
In addition to that, all of our sports wagering operators have very robust responsible gaming programs built into their apps. They also have the capability to force timeouts on people. They have the capability to see where there might be a problem gambling activity in a person's account, and they can intercede through their own platforms, offering the person the 1-800-GAMBLER number, for instance, or you might or send them some communication regarding responsible gaming. So I do know that's built in. It's sort of an industry standard when it comes to the sports wagering operators.
And what do you do for oversight of that to make sure that that's happening? Do you have a mechanism to see that?
Audits,
Audits?
yes.
So if you, and your audits, would your audits be trying to get a list of people who gambled or lost to, certain levels? Certain levels of losses in a short period of time? What are you auditing to get at that?
Peter, do you want to go into detail on some of what
Yeah.
we do? Okay.
Typically, when we do an audit, we're doing an audit of a couple of program areas that the operator has. As an example, it may be an audit of their anti-money laundering program, as well as their self-exclusion program or their responsible gaming program. And so what we'll do sometimes is we'll do a couple of things. We will take a look at what is their players with the highest level of gaming, the highest dollar amount of gaming, to do two things. One, did they comply with the anti-money laundering regulations or rules with respect to source of funds to make sure that this money isn't from an illicit source? The second thing is we'll take a look at it also. Is this someone who potentially has a gambling addiction problem? And did the operator look into that? Was that, is this a large percentage perhaps of, if they know a little bit more about of their income situation, is this a large, and so we'll take a look at those to see if we see issues there. And then we will take a look at our self-exclusion list. We'll run it against their marketing list to see if they're marketing to individuals who are on the self-exclusion list, which they shouldn't. Are they also, do they have accounts that are active and open of people on the self-exclusion list? We'll look at that as well. So we'll do these kind of checks. And then we generally, throughout the year, we also look at their marketing materials to make sure that their marketing materials are not targeting underage players, or targeting perhaps some that a vulnerable population. Not making statements out there suggesting that gambling is a way to get ahead, a way to overcome indebtedness or something. So we look at the quality of what they're putting out there in terms of their advertising and marketing here in the district.
Okay, and it's a challenging area, but one of the things that you said was that these operators have the capacity to identify where there's suspicious behavior that looks like it could put them at risk. They have the capacity, but are they doing it? Do you get reports of when they've done it? How much of this is happening?
We do get suspicious activity reports that they report to us. They have, under federal law, they have an obligation to file a suspicious activity report with the Department of the Treasury, one of the federal agencies there. And then they also have an obligation to notify us of suspicious activity in those filings. So we do get notice of those. And when we do the audits of the AML program, we take a look and see not only those reports where they filed a suspicious activity, but we take a closer look at those cases where they conducted an investigation and did not file a suspicious activity report. And we look into, well, why did you not file it? Was it suspicious? Is this something that could have raised the level of suspicion that you should have filed? So we do go through that with them. And sometimes, it's a discretionary area in terms of what suspicious activity is. And so sometimes you have this back and forth, and sometimes we make recommendations to them on how to improve their program. We've done that in the past with some of our operators on how they should improve the program that they have. And they've, in some cases, they've told us they've had already made the improvements and understand our concerns.
So, I mean, you said they have an obligation to report, and what's contractually, what are they required to do? In terms of responsible gaming measures, when providers licensed in the district observe problem gaming behaviors, what actions are they required to take? And I guess like mandatory cooling off periods included in those apps as an example. And I hear you say it's subjective, but do we provide any kind of guidance to the providers when such and such happens? What's the requirement on them? What triggers the requirement, and then what kinds of things happen?
A lot of their obligations really fall under our rules. And so at the time of licensing, before we license them, we take a look at their, we refer to it as the RG program. What does the responsible gaming program look like? And do they have these internal controls in place to ensure that they're not targeting minors, to ensure they're not targeting a vulnerable population, to ensure that they have things like in their mobile app, the functionality that somebody can elect to do a cooling off period, set limits on time, set limits on deposits and wagers. Do they have these things in place? And then what is their process for when they identify someone who they suspect maybe having RG or problem gambling issues? How do they approach them? What do they do? So we make sure that they have a program in place to address these things. And typically our experience has been each one of our operators has a designated staff member who's dedicated to that amongst others. Some of them have more than one. And so we go through that. We go through with them and give them our rules regarding responsible gambling and self-exclusion and all that. We give them our rules so they're well aware of it. And then on a continuous basis, we review their advertising, their marketing, and then like I said earlier, we do the audits to see how the program is progressing, and do we see any issues?
So, I mean, they have a program and you evaluate the program, but do we have any kind of baseline? And I mean, we may not, but like if a person makes 10 bets in an hour, that's a flag. If a person bets and loses $2,000, I'm making up numbers, but what I'm looking for is objective criteria that we require them to apply to then flag. Or is it that they have a program and we review it and determine whether we think it's sufficient?
I think it's the latter. What we did do a couple of years ago is we amended the rules to put in um, a language that we didn't set a precise number or amount, but if we put in the rules that if you see somebody who is repetitively gaming in a fast way, large sums, and we didn't necessarily define it, you can stop them. You can stop them. And so there's some discretion there. It's like, it may differ as to what somebody thinks is repetitive and somebody thinks is a minimum amount of money versus a high amount of money. But it is in the rules that we put in that to be able to stop somebody from continuing.
And I want to be cognizant of the complexities here. I mean, in ideal world, if somebody was gambling too high of a percentage of their income, you would be worried about it. And yet you don't know the person's income. And so how do you do that? And so one person's set of bets could look innocuous, but they're not innocuous for that person in that circumstance. And another could look troubling, and it's not troubling for that person in that circumstance. But trying to think about what are the most effective ways to protect the people who become the most vulnerable.
In the industry, that has been an issue, is that we know on the anti-money laundering side, you have an obligation to find out the source of funds. Can they afford to be, is the person, do they have the capacity to have this kind of money, or is it really coming from an illicit source? That issue on the responsible gambling side has been discussed nationwide. It's been because in other countries like the UK, they came up with an amount. And so in the UK, there is a set amount that if you gamble this much, the operator has an obligation to see whether or not that person really could afford to be doing that. And it hasn't carried over to this side, but it's being discussed in the industry. It's being discussed by the National Council on Problem Gambling. It's being discussed by the American Association of the AGA, American Gaming Association, but no one has really set a standard set amount that this is how much would trigger the operator to take a look into this from an RG standpoint.
Interesting. So, and on the app side, relatively easy to track. On the in-person retailer, a whole nother thing. And do you give training to your retailers if there are people who are coming in and a lot that they should alert? Yes.
We have, and we had one player that we found out who was on our self-exclusion list, and happened to be we found out that they were gaming at one of our retail locations, and so we talked to our retailer and instructed him, aside from talking to the gentleman himself, told them don't allow them, they're not allowed to play on the machines, and we told the player as well that you're not allowed to gamble in DC. You're self-excluded. You accepted that, and your term isn't up. And so we've had that. We've had another where it was repetitive play, and so we told the retailer also to not let them play because it was a lot of repetitive play and large dollar amounts.
I mean, this moves into third-party exclusion. Like, there's also like a bartender can say, no, sorry, you've had enough. Can a retailer say, sorry, you've had enough?
Our advice to the retailers, and we give them handouts, pamphlets on responsible gambling that covers everything. What is problem gambling? What are the resources that are available for you here in DC? We give those to our retailers, and our advice to them is that, if you see somebody who you either buy, this is part of the training. If you see someone who is maybe gaming a little too much, you see them every day or twice a day, 3 times a day, or you see somebody who it appears that they're stressed or from the gaming because they lost, give them the pamphlet, suggest they take a look at the pamphlet, suggest that they take a look at it because there's helpful information in there that they may need. And so that's part of the training that we give to the retailers to hand out these, aside from we have stickers and other signage on the machines and at our retailers that it gives the 1-800 number, the helpline.
And is it part of the contract with retailers that they perform that function, or is this just guidance that you provide?
No, it's part of their responsibilities. And so we have a list of responsibilities as part of the training that we give them, and that's part of it, along with reporting to a suspicious activity. And so that's part of that, and they sign it and as part of their retailer.
So in the third-party world, there's the voluntary program, but have you ever, is there consideration, or is there anybody in the industry who has a non-voluntary program, for example, where a family member or somebody else can come forward and say this person should be put on an exclusion list?
It's very difficult. I can give you my experience from my previous employment at a casino where we had an RG program, and we would have family members come in. In some cases, it was the children of the player that was asking us to exclude them, an involuntary exclusion, a third party, because they said they're spending too much time here. And that puts the casino in an awkward situation. And strange when you do talk, the way it plays out sometimes is that in this case, the parents will say, I can do what I want with the money that I have. It's, you can't exclude me just because my kids want you to exclude me. They're just concerned about their inheritance. I mean, you get into all these sort of permutations of that. And so it becomes a very difficult situation. What we would do sometimes is just tell the family members, we suggest that you talk to your family member and try to get them to maybe pull back on the gaming, that you do it, because it's going to be very difficult if that person does not want to, and then we're excluding them because of a third party, then, there could be liability issues that may come up in that for denying them services because of a third party. And if it's our lottery, we're denying them. If we deny them services, I think, and council could correct me if I'm wrong, but they would have an opportunity to be heard, right?
It's difficult to tell somebody they can't take part in a state regulated function without giving them an opportunity for a hearing. And with gambling, it's much different than something like alcoholic beverages. It's easy to tell when somebody's has been overserved and is intoxicated. With gambling, it really depends on the individual. Some people shouldn't gamble at all because they can't afford to do so. Some people, a $100,000 bet is nothing to them. And it's a different world. So it's very difficult to say that somebody else should have the ability to walk in to a governmental agency and say, this person shouldn't be allowed to gamble because I say so.
Okay, so, I mean, some of this, I think, this is what happens when you get a new oversight chair and they're
Yeah.
learning while they're doing. And so this may feel like a relatively long hearing. I think that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but I think it's useful for me to be, we spent a lot of time on your cash flow issues and responsible gaming and trends in the industry. And so I think it's all helpful to me. I hope it's not too burdensome to you. I don't want to make a hard promise, but I think we probably will finish shortly after 4:30.
I would like to make one point if that's okay.
Sure.
When we developed the responsible gaming rules that we have in place, we're very lucky to be in the same city as the National Council on Problem Gaming. Their executive director worked very closely with us in developing those, and the regulations that you see in place were all reviewed, and we took every single suggestion that was made or incorporated into the rules. Of course, times change and things change over time. And so, you know, we are constantly updating the rules, but we were very careful when we drafted those.
Okay, well, go ahead.
And if you will, I just want to say thank you for asking these questions. Those are good questions that should be asked about responsible gaming, where have oversight of this, and it's all new. And we welcome it because it is important and it's a vital part of what we do of protecting our people who might have a problem. Absolutely. So I do appreciate that. But everything we do is industry best standards in the lottery industry, from top to bottom. From my perspective, coming from the West Virginia Lottery to here, we do more in DC than they do in West Virginia. We exceed industry standards in some areas. So I'm very pleased to be able to say that.
Well, I'm pleased to hear you say it. I will root for you when you go back to West Virginia and visit your friends and family there. It's so, but on this involuntary, are there any states that do it? Are there any models of any place that does it?
A lot of everyone that has a legalized sports betting right now, for the most part, or casinos in operation, have some sort of self-exclusion list program.
But not a involuntary, not a
No,
third
no,
party.
not from a
Does
third
anybody does it?
Not that I'm aware of.
So just to be technically correct, we do have an involuntary program, and that is when OLG puts somebody on the list, but generally that's because they violated our laws or rules.
Okay. And we touched on the level 2. I was going to ask about when you would get to level 2. You just got to level 2.
We literally got approved last week, was it? Or 2 weeks ago? Go ahead.
No,
Peter.
for level 2, we got approved, it was mid-January, about January 15th.
Okay,
We got the certificate 2 weeks ago.
that's great. You mentioned the National Council on Problem Gaming, and you give $29,000 to their hotline.
They manage the hotline for the District of Columbia. Yes.
And so that's the $29,000. Is
Yeah,
that
it goes
for-
to help fund, I guess, their operation of that.
So that hotline covers more jurisdictions, and different jurisdictions contribute dollars, and it adds up to be able to pay
Yes.
for the person to answer the phone.
Yes.
Essentially, the infrastructure and the person to answer.
Talk to the person and send them to the appropriate help in that jurisdiction. So here it would be behavioral health.
So last year, I think the CBED, the Committee on Business and Economic Development, suggested maybe increasing contributions to that hotline fund. Has any move been done to do that?
So it's my understanding that in the past, there was council had the intention to dedicate a specific amount of money to problem gaming resources, which is something that the World Lottery Association, NASPL, and several of the bigger organizations recommend that states do. Have a percentage going to fund those things. And it's my understanding that in the past, there had been a sum of money, I think $300,000 directed to that, to behavioral health, but that was not through the OLG directly. From my understanding, from our engagement, from our responsible gaming folks, in talks with the folks at behavioral health, they have the resources they need, and they don't need any additional funding from what we've been told. However, it is kind of an industry best practice to have your lottery or your gaming oversight group contributing to those services in some way.
So the $29,000 isn't for the DBH program. The $29,000 is for,
In CPG.
and they have, how does it work? Is there a central operator, and then calls are referred to
The
relevant people?
Yes. Exactly, as you described.
So, and if somebody calls at 11 at night, is it a 9 to 5 operator, or is it
It's 24 hours a day.
and so what happens if somebody calls at 11 o'clock at night? How do they get referred in the district?
That is a good question. I'll have to, Peter, do you know the answer to that
Well,
one?
I think I know part of the answer is that it does run 24/7. And so when they call the number, since it's an 800 number, what they first do is they try to identify is this person a DC resident? Are they a DC? Because it could be somebody calling from Maryland, Pennsylvania. If it's from one of the other jurisdictions, they route the number to their equivalent in those jurisdictions. And so if it is somebody from the district, they then talk to them. It's a counselor who's been trained, talk to them, have that initial discussion regarding problem gambling, the issues they may be facing, and then they refer them to district resources that have been provided by the Department of Behavioral Health. So treatment center or centers that treat gambling addiction here in the district.
Okay, so there's a preliminary conversation that's substantive. This is a person who's trained in in talking with people, and then a referral for ongoing support.
Yes.
Been I don't want to reopen the can of worms, but in terms of the way in which funding is dealt with, I guess I'm partly hearing you say if all the money was flowing through OLG, some portion of it might go to DBH in order to support the gambling addiction function at DBH.
Only if council and the mayor directed that. Obviously, we don't
Right.
control where that money
But
goes.
but I thought I heard you say that
What-
you thought it was appropriate for.
It is an industry standard that there's some treatment funds made available to however the state entity deals with that. We do not have that set up here. Now, what I did say was I would love the ability to earmark some dollars to go to responsible gaming advertising. Right now, everything we do is just, gifts in kind types of those campaigns. I would love to have, for example, at the end of the year around the holidays, there is a big national movement called the Gift Responsibly campaign, where every lottery in the country takes part, and we emphasize don't give lottery tickets to children. Don't make them stocking stuffers, things like that. I go around, I do interviews, I'll go do radio, I'll do television, whoever will speak to me, but we don't have the money to pay for advertising. We do social media advertising around that with those messages. I would love to be able to take some of our advertising dollars and use in that type of vein.
Okay, so just so an interesting idea. I mean, and the idea of lottery tickets as stocking stuffers, yeah, that's not a good idea. But just to make sure that I understand how the money flows. So $29,000 goes to the hotline. The hotline is a centralized hub that the person at the end of the phone at the hotline talks with whoever it is from whatever jurisdiction, and then refers that person to resources in the relevant jurisdiction. So the $29,000 goes to pay for our share of staffing that line 24/7. And then the resources to fund the DBH for the ongoing support, that's a separate
That's
appropriation. It doesn't.
That does not come from lottery.
Okay. And then to what extent are you interacting with the hotline? Do you pay the money, but then are you checking in with the National Council on Responsible Gaming? What's your interaction with the hotline?
We check in with them and ask them, just as part of our general reason, we ask them for the statistics on how many DC residents are calling the line, how many have been referred. We try to gather that kind of information from them, that's the statistical information that they have, so that we can see, are we seeing any upward trend, any downward trend? And so that's what we use the hotline for.
And what are you seeing?
Um, it's been a while since I got the statistics, but there was an uptick, a general uptick when sports wagering came in. And they did see an uptick on that. It's one of the things right now I'm currently asking them for an updated list, because I'd like to see what has happened during the past year, because in this past year is when we've really had an uptick in sports wagering.
So I hear you on that, and I think that it continues to be interesting in that it may be that a similar number of people had issues, but they were operating using an app that wasn't regulated and they weren't steered towards the hotline. And then folks move over to a regulated app and they're steered towards the hotline. So you see an uptick, or it could be an uptick of the problem. You just don't know really, because you don't know to what extent sports wagering, legalized sports wagering, displaced unregulated sports wagering.
Yes, you're correct. We don't know.
Okay, so that's on the hotline side. What about DBH, where this is what folks have been referred to DBH, and DBH may be working with folks on their issues? Do you have data on that? Do you track that?
We don't have data on that. I think that's one of our sort of tasks that we're looking to, is getting some data from DBH on how many players are seeking services relating to gambling addiction. And so that's sort of on our list to get that data from DBH.
And I think when you look at what we would be able to obtain from DBH, you can probably get very high level information, but they're not going to be able to share HIPAA information with us, or anything that might be considered HIPAA, and what their legal counsel may be considered HIPAA.
But in DBH, like is there funding to DBH tells
So there
you they're
used to be
good?
funding. There used
Yeah.
to be, I think, 300,000 out of the tax revenue that came through. So part of the tax revenue was earmarked to DBH. That funding has been removed. It does not exist now.
I mean, do we have a sense that DBH is doing this work?
They have told us they are doing this work. They have told us their counselors are trained in problem gambling. So it's our understanding they are.
But so far, they've not provided data on how many people who they're working with, or
I have not, Peter, have you seen?
No, they haven't provided any data to us, but I think it's one where I think they're waiting for us to request the data. And so that's now where it's like, well, I think we're gonna have to request it from them to be able to get that data and analyze it, see what trends we're seeing if it's consistent perhaps with our self-exclusion list and the demographics we see on our self-exclusion.
so I'll join you in asking for that data. I mean, I think you guys should ask for that data to the extent that the next time I see somebody from DBH, I'll encourage them to provide that data. I think we want to be watching this to make sure that we're not creating problems. So in your pre-hearing response to question 5, you noted OLG has one responsible gambling program specialist. Did you say Donna White? Was that whose job it is to do all of the training for OLG staff members and licensed retailers, among several other responsibilities? Is one staffer for this important function? I'm sure she's great.
She is fantastic.
But is it enough?
Right now, yes. I think it is. We're a smaller jurisdiction. And I think in an ideal world, I'd love to have more. But with our revenue estimates and where we're at, it's what we can afford to have right now.
Okay. And do you have the capacity for one of you don't have a lot of vacancy, but you may have some vacancies to reprogram one of the vacancies to add.
We have a few vacancies, yes.
Have you thought about reprogramming any of those
As
vacancies?
part of our ongoing World Lottery Association review, you know, we have talked about um, what is necessary uh, for us to have the capacity that we need to have to do everything we need to do to reach level 3 compliance, level 4. I feel good about what we have right now with Donna. But it's something that we can continue to look at if we need to add another. One issue that does arise that makes us a little bit different when it comes to this, you have to be in most jurisdictions age 21 to sports wager or go to a casino. Here in the district, it's only 18. Our law literally allows for that, and that is unusual. And of all of the responsible gaming things we could be doing, that is something I believe council would need to act on, or the mayor. But right now, you can literally at age 18 sports wager in the district. Now, some of our apps won't allow it because the industry standard is age 21. But that is one area. When you look at statistics and you see that young men are sports wagering at a high rate, and there's been discussion on the national level of even in Congress about it. I think it might behoove us to consider age 21 for sports wagering and casino type gaming like that.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Just
And-
to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, it's super helpful that you did. In 1 minute, I'm going to ask you if there's anything else that we didn't discuss that you'd like to add. But
Okay.
first, I'm going to ask my chief of staff if there's something that I was supposed to ask you that I have yet to ask you.
Absolutely.
Oop. All right, I'm sorry, this was a false ending.
That's fine.
So, because part of what happened was, we got on a topic and I skipped over a section, so it's good that I asked.
Not a problem.
The ACFR recommendation, so the annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR, noted several deficiencies for OLG in their internal control standalone audits, several of them surrounding security concerns for OLG's internal control system, or ICS, and central gaming system. First, I'm going to ask you to provide some context on how OLG currently manages its internal control system. And then I'm going to check through the findings and
Okay.
see if I can have you respond to those.
Well, thank you very much for that question and the opportunity to discuss this. So during our audit, there were 9 recommendations on ways that we can improve our security apparatus around our internal control system. And I want to make it clear, our ICS is not our central gaming system, first and foremost. None of these were what I would consider a high level alarm in any way. Our systems are very secure. The integrity of the lottery is first and paramount in everything that we do, and there is ample security in place. We had a new auditor this year, and everything that they checked off of in these areas came from Octo requirements. Now, several of these findings are related to the same item, and I'll wait until you go down the list to explain. But we had other security measures in place that I don't believe the auditor was aware of that may exceed what the Octo requirement was. However, I view audits as an opportunity for improvements constantly and to do things better. So what we have done is we've accepted all of those, and we're going to add that extra layer onto our already robust protections for our ICS. So I just want you to know that. And we are in the process of updating a lot of hardware and software at Lottery. And some of these we're in mid-process of improving on already. So this just hits to that same point. So I felt really good that we're in the place that we're at with these. So
Okay, so then let's check through them. Lack of backup restore testing.
yes, we do backup restore testing on all of our vital systems through the central gaming system. Our vendor that runs our central gaming system for the lottery and iLottery does backups twice a year. It's required in what we do and in our contract. This involves our ICS system, which is managed differently. It's what we use to balance off of and to double check our central gaming system. And we actually have two ICS systems. So when it talks about backup happening, we have two, an A and a B that run in parallel. So they're running at all times. If something happens to A, B takes over. If something happens to B, A is back online. So that's how the system is designed. We understand why the auditor found that we did not do a full disaster failover for our ICS, but that happens with our CGS, which is the most important system where all the money flows through, all of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an additional on top of our parallel system, a backup every year.
Okay, lack of disaster recovery testing.
That falls in the same, these are non-essential systems. All of our essential systems that are most priority already do that. Where this is in parallel, we're going to do that as well.
Lack of multi-factor authentication for the ICS.
Okay. I do want to say this publicly to make people understand. That's great, but the security that was already in place, I feel exceeds that. The company that designed our ICS is a lottery industry leader in ICS design. And in order to access our system, you have to activate an account. And the only way to do that is to get the permission from one of our IT supervisors and one of our security people to activate that account. In order to access it physically, you have to go through many doors and there is a security pad on the door even to access that center. So we feel that protection and how it is set up exceeds multi-factor, but we've agreed with the finding because it is an ACTO policy to have multi-factor. So now what will happen when one of our 6 people that have inactive accounts goes in and requests an account to be activated to work on the ICS or to get data from the ICS, the security will still be the same that it is. We're just adding at the end, they're now going to have to use multi-factor on their phone as an additional layer. So we're all for that.
Okay. ICS user access authorization not being documented with OLG.
Yes, we're talking about fewer than 10 people that have inactive accounts that stay inactive all the time and they're only turned on. So we have concurred with that. We are putting it into our standard operating procedures that we document who those 8 are in a written report every year.
Okay, lack of periodic user access review of the ICS.
Same issue with the users. Like I said, there are fewer than 10. What we're going to do is we have recently added a JIRA system at the lottery in the last year, and we're putting those workflows into it to deal with that. And we will have the documented procedures for that written down.
Okay, the inactive accounts found in the ICS that have not yet been disabled.
Okay, so there, like I said, fewer than 10 accounts. I believe there were 8. We had 2 where they're always in an inactive state. That's how the system is designed. We had two where one employee switched to another job within our agency. The account was still there, but it was inactive. But of course, all the accounts are inactive unless you go through that double layer of protection to have an account turned on. So we didn't feel it was necessary to delete the accounts, but because of this recommendation, we're going ahead and doing that. So those accounts have been completely removed.
Okay. The unsupported operating system identified on the district server
Server.
devices?
So what this is, these are not vital systems. These are servers that have applications that may be in-house, older applications that did not work necessarily with the updated version of Windows. They were on our master plan to improve. We're actually 50% of the way through upgrading to the new Windows. There are some layers involved with OCIO and OCTO, but we have been able to work through that. We're in the process. We're halfway through. I welcome these recommendations because we're already in the process of doing that. And we will have that completed by April 31st. So we felt good about that.
April 30th. I don't think there's an April 31st.
Oh, I'm supposed to be a type.
I had Seaver, so we're, we're.
All right,
we're
by
all
May,
good.
we will have that done by May.
Okay. The ACFR, in the ACFR, there was a line for OLG showing 15.1 million in unpaid prizes. What comprises that 15 million? Is that individuals who won local games such as DC 3, 4, or 5 and did not pick up their winnings?
Are you saying 15 million or
15 million.
1.5 million?
I'm saying 15 million, but do you think it,
Well, that's.
You said in unpaid prizes?
yeah,
Which act for statement is that?
not sure.
Yeah, it's not that high.
The unpaid prizes is
No,
not that high.
our unclaimed prize fund is generally around 1.5 to 2 million is what it runs. And by law, that should go back to players according to how our law is written. So what we do is throughout the year, any of our second chance prizing on games and things like that, we try to budget around 1.5 million to go back to the players in forms of prizes. But yes, that is uncollected funds where people didn't cash a ticket. You would be surprised. Someone, they forget that they bought a ticket and they won $5 and they just throw it away. It could be $100. I know of situations where $1 million prizes have not been claimed, like from Powerball and Mega Millions in other states. We don't have one of those here in the time that I've been here, but just for whatever reason, sometimes people don't go to the store and cash their tickets sometimes.
Under district law, you have 180 days to claim a prize. And if you don't claim it within the 180 days, it automatically goes and the prize amount goes into the unclaimed prize fund.
And Sarah, why 180 days? Has there ever been consideration to being a shorter period than that?
Some states it's 90 days, but most are 180. It gives the player time, and we do have to close our books at some point on a particular game.
And then second chance prizes, what's that?
So a lot of times when we do a promotion, sometimes it'll be in conjunction with an instant ticket. It may be an online promotion, but we will have games where it gives players a second chance to win, and that funds those types of prizes. So let's say in the structure, the game structure of a ticket, the math behind it, the prizes should total a certain amount. By using that fund, we can augment that a little bit and have a second chance component. For instance, if you didn't win, keep your ticket, scan this barcode or go to the website and enter, and you can win a prize of whatever amount.
And so the dollars have to go to participants. it can't go back to the general fund. It's not that it's money that it will eventually go back to the general fund.
The way, and I should probably let the lawyer handle this one. The way I understand it is, the intent is it to be returned to players. However, we don't have a mechanism for carrying funds over from year to year. So we try to spend that, but if we can, it ends up going into the general fund.
Okay. So it looks like page 112 of the ACFR, it looks like 15.1 million, but maybe
112.
why don't you look for that and I'll
Sure.
keep asking
Yeah,
questions and we'll
absolutely,
come back to
absolutely.
it.
Because I would like to know that.
Table N3-1. Okay. Commercial bingo and table gaming. Can you provide an update on how many applications were submitted for commercial bingo in the district since it was legalized in the FY26?
We
budget?
have not had any yet. We are working on our rules for commercial bingo. Maybe once those are published, we might get some interest, but to date, there has not been any.
And I thought there was a reference earlier to that there might be some coming, but is that just a prediction that once you have rules that there might be?
It's just a prediction, a hopeful prediction on that.
I mean, is it any sense, is it a lack of appetite out there for commercial bingo? What,
I have not seen interest from large suppliers, other than one, that has, but they would require some changes to our law, in order to come in. A lot of the commercial bingo entities, require large spaces and a number of, tips being sold or machines in order to generate revenue. So they may see it as cost prohibitive. But to date, we haven't had anyone under the current structure.
Okay. Recently, the Virginia Senate passed a bill to allow for the construction of a casino in Fairfax County. While the bill has not yet passed the Virginia House, how would another casino opening up so close to the district affect a potential table games market in the district?
It would be a direct competitor. Right now, with National Harbor being right there, it creates challenges. For the proposed legislation with poker and blackjack, that would be very difficult to be profitable outside of a casino environment. Usually, large poker events are held in casino environments because of the sheer cost of security and everything that goes around it. Most casinos make their money from slot machines and from food and beverage. Table games are not a huge revenue driver. Um, um, I think in the right circumstance, if there were a major event, maybe a special license for a weekend, that if you had a major casino provider want to do it, that there could be a possibility for the district to capture something like that, that might be profitable for someone. But it becomes difficult outside of the casino environment. And obviously due to federal law, we can't have casinos in the district. So
it's interesting. I mean, I guess I'm hearing you say in terms of day-to-day operation, table gaming, it's
expensive.
hard to imagine it being profitable. I suppose there could be food and beverage. There wouldn't be slot machines, but there could be food and beverage. And so maybe that's a thing. But then part of the reason that I think the mayor has taken an interest in this is something like the World Series of Poker. But I think I'm hearing you say perhaps that could be gotten at through a special license for a
Yes.
particular event.
I would love to be able to host a massive tournament that filled all of our hotels and helped our businesses. Absolutely. I understand what the intent is. And I will do everything to help make that happen because I want what's best for our businesses. I just know that the cost of offering a poker tournament is very high, and providing the apparatus around it has expenses involved. And if you don't have a major casino operator that is well versed in poker rooms pushing for that, it's going to be difficult to attract something like that. In the whole world, when I look at these types of events, there are a few circumstances where major events are held in certain cities under like a special license, but I'm not aware of any like small operation poker rooms that make any sort of revenue uh, outside of a casino.
It sounds like could share the goal, but see the path slightly different than the legislation that's been proposed.
Yes, sir. I know what the goal is, and I'm supportive of it, and we will do our best to enact and regulate whatever the mayor and council decide in that area. I just know from my experience, the lottery in West Virginia regulates casinos as well. Poker rooms are shrinking; they're not growing in casinos. So that would be a challenge when you look at the potential new casino and the casinos that already exist right at our border in Maryland and West Virginia, where they have major poker tournaments taking place right at our doorstep.
I hear you. I mean, I do hear the administration also in that, I mean, you could imagine the district being an attractive site for a major
Oh,
event.
absolutely. Yes. And I'm supportive of it.
Mhm.
100%. I want to make that clear. I'm supportive of it. I'm just not sure how it will work. I hope I'm wrong and that there is huge demand and we're able to fill all of our hotels every weekend. That would be fantastic. But I just know we have a large casino at National Harbor right here.
And perhaps another one coming in Fairfax County and then
And
also.
Charlestown, West Virginia is not that far away either, nor is Baltimore.
Okay. Table N12 or page.
Yes, so part of the challenge that we have is on our books, the monies in our bank accounts are not exclusively lotteries, right? It's kind of like a pooled cash system that the district uses. It's managed by the central accounting division. I'm forgetting their name right now, but essentially that $15 million represents cash in our account that is not paid to players yet. But it's for players, but it's not paid to players yet. That's essentially what that money is.
So that's not necessarily the stale money.
No, it's definitely not that. It's just excess cash sitting on our account.
I see.
Yeah.
But, and
Two pay.
some of it will become stale. A tenth of it. $1.5 million was what you thought was what after 180 days.
Yes, what he's talking about is what's called the unclaimed prizes. So essentially, if somebody wins a prize, they have 6 months to collect that money. They don't collect it, it kind of goes to the unclaimed prize fund. This is literally cash sitting in our account from years of monies that's come in and out of our account that just is considered cash, and they're considering unpaid to players. I hope that makes sense.
You've confused me.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's unpaid to players,
Mhm.
but there might be
So it's essentially
liability
if-
for some of
Right.
it.
If a player were to hit a winning for, say, $10 million, we could tap into that money to pay that amount of money.
That I believe what Alex is referring to is the district's way of if we have, let's say, a $2 million Powerball winner where you don't win the jackpot prize, but that we get hit with that expense, which could happen. That is
We
where
could tap
that
into
money
that.
comes from that we pay for that.
Right.
So that is their mechanism for covering our prize liability that can occur.
Correct.
I think that's what that is.
And
So if I could add a little bit to it. So essentially what OFIS does now is Any amount over and above $2 million, they sweep from our bank accounts, right? So we're only allowed to have $2 million in our bank account. And when they take that money, they take it and put it in some other pooled account that they invest and do whatever they need to do with. But if we have a player who wins, say, $10 million through some crazy game that we have, we can essentially tap into that money to pay the player that winning that they deserve.
That causes us not to have a cash flow problem if we
Exactly.
ended up with a lot of winners. It can happen. Not getting too much into this, but for instance, the Powerball game, in the second tier prize, if you match 5 numbers and not the Powerball, you can win $1 million. There have been cases where, in my own experience, one player will play the same number 14 times and they'll win 14 or $28 million. And that second tier prize is the responsibility of that lottery, not the group, to pay. So we have to have that reserve in order to be able to pay if a situation like that were to arise.
So if we looked at that number over an extended period, is the idea that you want to maintain it at 15 million? Why is it 15 million as opposed to 12 million or 20 million?
It's a cumulative number based on ins and outs over the past few fiscal years. So, but that's the amount of money we have access to in the event we have a winning that's above what we have in our bank account, which is $2 million.
Okay, between the two of us and the three of us, I think we understand it. I'm not going to claim that I'm going to be the one to explain it. Okay, great. So we are now at that point where if there is anything that you have that you'd like to say or talk about that we have not raised, speak now or.
Mr. Chairperson, I just want to say thank you for today, for diving into some of these topics and issues. I'm just appreciative of council and I'm appreciative of the mayor for their support of the OLG. We do have challenges. We have faced some economic headwinds in the past year. The government shutdown for a month did impact us. The bad weather with our snowcrete problem has definitely impacted us. But we are doing some good things. I'm very proud of the people we have at OLG. I think we have a world-class staff, and I'm very appreciative of council for all their support. That's it.
All right, with that, this concludes today's public hearing. To those watching or listening, if you plan on submitting written testimony for the record, please do so by uploading it to the council's online hearing management system before the record closes at 5 p.m. on March 10th. The time is now 4:55 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned.